Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Critical Weight Theory. And this is actually episode 400. So I've done technically more than 400 of these, but this is officially designated as episode 400. And here we're going to look at one of the legends of music. We're exploring one of the most influential rock bands of all time, The Police. So I'm going to look at their punk beginnings and their global superstardom. And their stories, it's an interesting ride. So let's jump in to the world of Sting and the Police. So the Police formed in London in 1977. At first, they were mostly a punk band, but they quickly set themselves apart by blending in elements of reggae, jazz, and new wave. This fusion created a sound that was uniquely theirs, setting the stage for their massive success. Of course, you might be able to find some bands that were blending genres, but very few, if any, were as successful as the Police were in terms of creating the reggae rock sound. The trio consisted of Sting, Andy Summers, and Stuart Copeland. Such a powerhouse sound, and each was a powerhouse musician in their own right. Sting, whose real name is Gordon Sumner, was the band's lead vocalist, bassist, and primary songwriter. His poetic lyrics and unmistakable voice became the signature of the Police. Although, I mean, there's a song or two where the lyrics I'm not so crazy about, but, he was considered a poetic voice in some key respects. Andy Summers was the guitarist, known for his innovative use of effects and textured playing style that added depth to their sound. But I can't really talk today. Maybe that's because I just got done eating a pizza not long ago. But anyway, if you want to play one of the hardest riffs, go ahead and try to play um, Every Breath You Take on guitar. That riff, it sounds relatively simple, but you have to do some pretty far stretches in order to play it correctly. And plus, it's repeated throughout most of the song. So there's a repetition factor. So it's actually more challenging than a person might think. So go ahead if you're a guitarist, or if you want to challenge yourself on guitar and, you know, try that one out. And if you can ever master that riff, then you've probably mastered the guitar pretty well. There's also Stuart Copeland, the drummer and percussionist. He brought an energetic and complex rhythm that defined their unique musical identity. And of course, you had their debut album, their breakthrough album, and which really helped them rise to fame. It was called Outlandos d'Amour, released in 1978. It gave them their first taste of mainstream success. It had tracks like Roxanne, which I think a lot of people have heard somewhere down the line. It was initially banned by the BBC, but later became a classic. And that just gives you an idea of how prudish the BBC were, for that song was banned. You also had So Lonely, a track blending reggae and rock. And, well, Roxanne does that as well. And Can't Stand Losing You, which was a song about teenage heartbreak, apparently. And with their fusion of styles, catchy hooks, and often thought provoking lyrics, the Police quickly became one of the most talked about bands in rock, and they had plenty of hit albums and songs. Over the years, the Police released several albums that, established their place in music history. You had Regatta de Blanc in 1979. The album featured Message in a Bottle, one of their most famous songs, of course. and Walking on the Moon. These songs helped catapult them to international fame, while Roxanne was definitely a success. Message in a Bottle was probably a little bit more successful. You also had Zenyatta Mondata. They have a talent for picking album titles, I guess, huh? That was from 1980, known for hits like Don't Stand So Close to Me and D Do 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 Da 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 Da. Well, I didn't say it correctly. I'm not Sting, so I can't really master that sort of baby talk. That is actually, if I'm being honest, possibly my least favorite Sting song, or Police song, I suppose. It's something I'm not a huge fan of. I don't know. I kind of want to like it because of the baby talk sort of title, but I don't know. I just can't get into it much. Anyway, we also had Ghost in the Machine from 1981. It was a darker synth driven album featuring every little thing she does is magic and spirits in the material world. And when I say dark, I don't mean it's like goth central or anything. It's just a slightly darker sound to it. The Police really, generally speaking, aren't that dark of a band, although they do have a song called Murder by Numbers, and that's actually featured pretty well in the movie Copycat, which is about a copycat serial killer. So if you want to see that song used to a very chilling effect in a nice thriller movie, go ahead and watch Copycat. I'll probably at some point review that movie, and maybe I'll remember to mention the Police when I do. You also had Ghost in the Machine in 1981. Oh, I just mentioned that one. Anyway, I meant to move on to Synchronicity from 1983. It's a widely respected album considered a masterpiece. It included Every Breath You Take, King of Pain, and Wrapped Around Your Finger. Now, like I said, I love Every Breath You Take, but Wrapped Around Your Finger is actually a pretty nice song. As you can tell, I'm not a police basher. Um, I like them. I try to like bands, in general. I'm not always successful. I definitely have some musicians that I'm not too keen on. But, usually it's an apolitical thing, and usually it has more to do with just not sharing an affection for that musical style. Maybe it's a little bit too generic. I'm sure some people don't like the Police because they are pop oriented or whatever. Some people probably say, oh, they started off as punk or whatever, but then they started to sell out and became more pop or whatever. But I don't really care that much about that. Despite their incredible success, tensions among the band members were pretty well documented. The creative and personal conflicts eventually led to their breakup in 1986. Sting embarked on a hugely successful solo career, experimenting with jazz, pop, and world music. And he was one of the people that I considered a VH1 musician. you know, they were, or Sting was more in the VH1 vein, even more than the Police were. MTV was a little bit more edgy, and VH1 was more like, oh, we're adult alternative or whatever, and adult classic rock, like soft rock or whatever. That was sort of the world of VH1, and Sting. I mean, you gotta admit it, he fit right in to that environment. Andy Summers explored jazz and experimental music and released several solo projects. Admittedly, I've never listened to one of his albums, his solo albums, but I'm just going over the historical data here. Stuart Copeland shifted to composing film scores and he collaborated with various artists. Well, there was a reunion at some point, and even though the Police were only active for about a decade, Their impact on music was immense. They won multiple Grammy Awards. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and in 2003. But the reunion was, relatively short lived. Through 2007 and 2008, they did a world tour to celebrate their 30th anniversary, proving their music still resonated with fans. And I've got a few fun facts about the Police. Maybe they'll be interesting for you. Roxanne was, like I said, initially banned by the BBC for its subject matter, but became one of their most beloved songs. And yes, the song is about a prostitute, or as people like to say nowadays, sex worker. And I never really seriously analyzed the lyrics, but you can pretty much tell what it was about. And the band was among the pioneers of the music video era, helping shape how MTV influenced pop culture in the 1980s. So it's hard to say like to what extent they did significantly shape music videos, but I do think that the Police were one of the bigger bands of the music video era, so they must have had some influence. I can't say that I really watched that many Police music videos when I was younger. I wasn't as much into this sort of music, but I've kind of appreciated it as I've expanded my musical tastes, so to speak. Because I can always go ahead and listen to like some hard rock or heavy metal or punk rock or whatever if I want. The hardcore stuff. But sometimes I'm fine with just putting something like the Police on. Their song "Every Breath You Take" became their only U.S. number one hit, yet its lyrics are often misinterpreted as a love song rather than the dark, obsessive track it really is. As an added little note, the song is used to surprisingly hilarious yet creepy effect in the anthology horror film Cat's Eye and the segment titled Quitters Inc. I love that little story, and Every Breath You Take it's just such a perfect little song for that little moment in that story. So if you can, check out Cat's Eye. It's a good movie overall. But my favorite individual story is Quitters Inc., which really makes full use of this song. I mean, what can I say? There are a few really good movies that, for whatever reason, use this song use this song to some creepy and perhaps humorous effect. And the Police were a band like no other. I think even if you're a detractor, you have to admit that about them. There's no band that sounds exactly like them, and I think they would be afraid to mimic them too much. I'm sure there are bands that like Elvis Costello might have a few moments, or the Clash. Any reggae rock kind of band probably has a few moments that are comparable to the Police in some way. But overall, I would say that their sound is quite different, and they blended genres, they pushed musical boundaries, and they left behind a catalog of instantly recognizable and for many people unforgettable songs. Though they disbanded at their peak, their legacy continues to influence people today, and of course, you can still hear them on classic rock radio. And I think I think they're, one of those bands that could grow on you. Like if you were to listen to them, you'd find out that, oh, the Police are a little bit more nuanced than I thought they were. Their sound is a little bit more diverse. It's like a lot of bands. There might be some individual songs you're not crazy about, maybe even full albums that you'd skip. But overall, I think if you give the Police a shot, you might actually like some of their songs. So that's it for this episode of Critical Weight Theory. If you enjoyed my quick little look at the Police, don't forget to subscribe, and especially if that's on YouTube, I'm trying to build my YouTube numbers. And, feel free to tune in next time as I explore more music legends or movies or TV shows, or, you can find my politics disagreeable when I talk about society and what's in the news and political philosophy and such. But anyway, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep the music alive.